Thank you for your time today. This is the Eco-Design Best Practices for a Circular Economy. This is our end of project report out. Today, we have our chair, Julio Vargas from IBM, who is going to be presenting our findings. I do want to let everybody know that you are on mute. If you have questions during the session, I would ask you please type those into the chat window. And if there's time at the end, I will try to unmute people and let you ask your question directly. If not, I will act as the moderator and ask questions. It kind of depends on time and how many people we have on the line. But with that, let me turn it over to Julio so that he can tell you about the good work of this team and some of the things that we heard. I think you will be impressed. Julio?
Great, thank you, Mark. And thanks everyone for joining and welcome. We're very excited to share with you our project, which is Eco-Design Best Practices for Circular Electronics Economy. Mark, if we could go to the next slide. This is the agenda we're going to cover today. I will provide a little bit of information about our team, the background of the project, how it came about, the approach that we took with the project and how that evolved, and what we learned. And we have three key takeaways here, or themes that we're going to cover, and we'll discuss how we came about these and what they mean. And finally, what is next and where we're going with the project. Next page, please. This is an overview of our team, and we had a very diverse team from several different organizations with various experiences, and we drew upon the experiences and contacts of the team, and you'll see why this is so important here in a little bit, specifically the contacts, to bring this project together. And I'll go ahead and just thank all the team members now for all of the help in putting this project together. Next page, Mark. So let's take a look at the background and how this project came about. We wanted to look at how to drive and socialize the best practices we see in the ICT industry around the eco-design. We know that there are a lot of pressures from regulators in countries and regions bringing about regulations based around green technologies and eco-design, but we also see a drive from customers, not just at the consumer level, consumer products, but also at the industrial level. Consumers want to know that the products they're using have some sort of process based around eco-design to ensure the minimization of their impact on our Earth. And companies want to be able to show that they're purchasing enterprise level equipment that has some thought put to it in order to minimize the ecological footprint of the products that they're using. We understood that there were several leaders in eco-design that were implementing some very interesting and very innovative processes above and beyond what is required by regulators and regulations based around eco-design. And we wanted to bring those insights to the rest of the industry and mature the industry capability and be able to share those in an effective manner. Next slide, please. So the objective of our project was to take the insights and the experiences of those leaders, as I mentioned, what they're doing above and beyond regulatory requirements, and seeing how they're applying them to their processes and their products. We want to take a look at what decisions and what has been implemented that looks at the entire holistic view of how products are used and how they affect the environment around them, and increase the awareness of what the technologies are out there, what practices are out there that are being implemented that we have seen that are successful, and be able to provide that to the industry in order to mature its capability around this subject. Next slide, please. So our strategy and approach was to leverage the relationships and contacts within our team and reach out to who we have identified within the ICT industry as leaders around eco-design, and ask them to come and join us for interactive webinar sessions. And we've done 3 so far, for a total of 60 minutes each. And what we do is we give presenters about 20 minutes to present, and then we have a 10-minute Q&A session after each presentation. So we have 2 experts sharing their experiences per session, and we've done 3 sessions for a total of 6 sessions so far. And we'll take a little closer look at who has presented, what companies have presented during these sessions. We have published these sessions. They are on the iNEMI YouTube page, and I would imagine as well you can reach the presentations through the iNEMI website, and we'll also provide some links to the presentations coming up here shortly. During the presentation, we had, as I mentioned, the Q&A sessions to make sure that they were interactive, and we were able to get real-time feedback on the types of presentations, what was presented, and what we could improve for the future. As we mentioned, we pulled on the experiences and contacts within the organizations that participated in the project to be able to identify these speakers and also advertise the sessions that we have done so far. Next slide, please, Mark. So for the long term, where do we see this project going? We want to have recurring meetings to continue that stream of experiences and information, and be able to harness that and provide that back to the industry, and be able to track what has been implemented so far and what has worked, what hasn't worked, is one of the key questions that we ask as well. And possibly develop a system to be able to see what has had the greatest impact. And once we find what has had the greatest impact, possibly be able to feed that into industry standards. The benefits that we see, the main one really is to mature the industry capability around eco-design, and be able to really leverage those experiences and what has been implemented, what has worked and what hasn't worked by the presenters and industry experts, and be able to implement that more efficiently throughout the industry. Next slide, please, Mark. So eco-design, we wanted to focus on a very specific area of eco-design. And that was ICT hardware right at the design phase of the hardware. And the reason why we wanted to do this is because we understood that how you design the product has a great impact, not only in the processes that precede manufacturing, but also the processes that come after manufacturing. Whether that be how the raw material is sourced and what type of raw material is sourced is really driven by what materials you're using in your design, how that product can be manufactured or remanufactured, distributed, the consumption, how it's used by the users, how it's collected, and what can be recycled from that product. We feel that these are all very important and very impactful areas that are derived directly from how the product is designed. There are a lot of areas that are very important, but we're out of scope for this project. One very good example of this is how companies or organizations procure the energy that they're using for manufacturing or just running their basic operations. We wanted to focus on the design and not enterprise level CO2 emissions or the recycling or waste reduction activities being done at facilities. Just because we feel that these are important, there are projects around these, and we really wanted to focus on that design area. Next slide, please, Mark. So what was our approach? How did we approach this project and kick it off? Let's have a look at the next slide. We started with a set of questions which were framework questions. And the focus of these questions was to go above and beyond regulatory standards, and also above and beyond what you would find in an organization's corporate responsibility report. We wanted to go beyond the metrics and really understand what was the driver behind the decisions, how those decisions came about, what were the processes implemented, what were the experiences around implementing the processes, and what relationships were formed. Were some of the examples of these framework questions. Next slide, please. Who did we invite and who have we had so far? You can see here a list of speakers that we had in our first 3 sessions. And on the right-hand side, you see the links to the presentations that will take you to iNEMI's YouTube page. And you can watch all these presentations. You can see here, it's a very diverse group of companies that we were able to reach out to and get to present to us. Companies from double-digit millions in revenue to triple-digit billions in revenue. Companies that are at the enterprise level in their ICT hardware, and companies that provide consumer-level ICT hardware. Companies that are represented globally, and companies that are very regional in nature. And keep that thought in the diversity of these companies, because we're going to talk about that a little bit here in the slides coming up. So let's go to the next slide, please.
Just wanted to tell everybody I did drop into the chat window the link to the iNEMI YouTube page where all of these sessions are, as well as other iNEMI presentations. So if you're looking for those after we hear from Julio, go check it out.
Great, thank you, Mark. So let's have a look at what we learned and what we took out of these presentations by the participants. We have some very interesting quotes here, and I'll cover a couple of the ones that are most memorable, at least to me. The first one is Schneider Electric stated, "Durability is the heart and DNA of the company." I can give you a little bit of context behind this quote and how it came about. The question was, and it was one of our framework questions, how did you get started in this journey in eco-design? And the speaker provided some very good background and said that from the very beginning, maybe 15 years ago, Schneider Electric really started out, and they knew that that durability was very important to them. And this is a very good example of companies implementing a mantra or a culture around what they want to implement, and always keeping that in mind in everything that they do. Another one that's very interesting to me is from Fairphone, the fourth one down. Sometimes it's surprising what can be done when someone asks for it. Feel free to ask. So to provide some context behind this quote, the question to Fairphone was, how has your relationship changed, or have you formed new relationships with suppliers in your eco-design, in your pursuit for eco-design? And the answer came back that, you know, we had requirements. We didn't see anybody else in the industry having these requirements of their suppliers. So what did we do? We went out and asked our suppliers, and our suppliers said, yes, that's probably something that we can do. So oftentimes we get stuck in an idea that our suppliers can only provide what is industry standard. And Fairphone showed here that sometimes you have to ask, and when you least expect it, they're going to say, yes, that's something that we can do for you. Next slide, please, Mark. We had our sessions, we had our framework questions. The framework questions came back sometimes before the presentation, so we had a chance to have a look at what the presenters were going to present. And a lot of times, most of the framework questions were answered during these sessions. And it was a lot of information. We had probably what you would call a very good problem, right? We had a lot of information that came back, especially after we transcribed all of the content during the sessions, and we took all of the framework questions and brought all of that together. Having a look at that, we decided we were going to need to do some sort of analysis, some sort of qualitative analysis to extract the most important information and not just provide that same information that was probably pretty hard to process because there was so much of it for our audience in a meaningful manner. So we took all of that information and we sorted it to find and look for consistencies and patterns among what the information that we got back. And what we found when we coded was that there were some very common insights. And some of the examples, as you see here, are mission-driven activities, things that companies are doing right now, collaborating with others, technology-driven activities. And we took those and we went back to the answers that we got from a lot of our questions, and then the information that we got from the sessions, from the transcription of the sessions. And we extracted some key takeaways and themes. And you can see the three primary ones that we extracted here in the bottom row. Take action now. There are things that you can do right now to implement something around eco-design. Collaboration is essential. And you can implement eco-design across your organization. And when you include all of your multidisciplinary teams, you can have a greater impact. It'll be a force multiplier when you implement that culture across your teams. And there are things that you're going to have to plan for and will require a strategic approach and technical innovation if you want to implement these things in the future. So those are the three key themes that we pulled out of all of the wonderful information that we had from all three of our presentations. Next slide, please. So let's have a look at some of these themes. So the first one, some actions to support eco-design can be implemented right now. There's no need to wait. And let's see what was done around this. One very good example for Schneider Electric was they started out with a life cycle assessment, and they wanted to understand their impact. And they wanted to provide this life cycle assessment to their customers so their customers could understand the impact of the products that they were purchasing. And they took it one step further. They partnered with this organization, with the ecopassport, which is an objective third party that came in and made sure that their life cycle assessment was legitimate and all of the information that they were providing to their customers was correct. Next slide, please. Here you can see the result of that life cycle assessment where they were measuring kilograms of CO2 for the carbon footprint of their product. This is a very interesting life cycle assessment done by ADVA, right? They wanted to understand their impact. Not only did they want to understand their impact, but they wanted to maximize it and make sure that what they were implementing was truly going to have an impact globally and ecologically. So they didn't want to just extend the lifetime of their products without understanding what that impact was going to be. So they did a study comparing one of their lesser efficient previous designs of a product to a newer design that had less energy consumption. So what they found was that there was a break-even point, and then there was a point where it was better as far as carbon footprint to replace the product, replace the older product with the newer product because it was more efficient in the way it used energy, and it had a greater impact as far as carbon footprint. So this is a very good example of understanding what your impact is and understanding really what you want to do to have that the greatest impact with your eco design. Next page, please. So that brings us to a very important point, is we covered how diverse our participants were. We had 6 presenters. All 6 organizations had some sort of understanding of what their impact was. They did some sort of study. So this is a very good example of something that you can do right now, is do a life cycle assessment or do some sort of assessment in an area that you want to impact, or see which area, if you have several areas that you want to impact, see which area will have the greatest impact, and go out and do that. And this is a very good example of how these 6 companies, being as diverse as they are, had that common activity that they did in their journey for eco design. Next page, please. Collaboration is needed, and it's very important in the keys to success. And if you drive collaboration, you can impart it into the company culture and ensure you have the greatest impact, and it'll be a force multiplier. So let's have a look at some of the examples and see how this was done. This is a very interesting slide from Google. And you can see here a list of the teams that they enlisted throughout their journey for eco design. And you can see that they're very diverse teams. We have teams that are technical as well as non-technical. And they had to pull in the expertise from all of these teams to make sure that they had the greatest impact when they were going through their processes. Next slide, please. This is a slide from Nokia, and we can see here how the multidisciplinary implementation affects not only the product level impact, but also the societal impact. So if you look here on the lower left-hand side, you can see that the expertise around product design, around sourcing, manufacturing, logistics impacts the operational impact of the product level impact, and in the wider circle, ensuring that that company culture is there to make sure that whatever product is being produced has the greatest societal impact, not only in improving the lives of the users, but also the smallest ecological footprint. Next slide, please. This concept, the future is bright, talks about things that are often in the longer distance or in the future that can be implemented, that can have great impact on eco design. Some of the implementation of what you're going to see requires strategic approaches and thoughts about where you want your business to go. So if we take a look at the next slide, this is Fairphone. Fairphone is a company that makes a completely modular cell phone, and they had identified the carbon footprint of cell phone use among consumers, and they wanted to address the fact that cell phones, I think on average, have like a 2-year lifespan, and they really wanted it to extend that. And their company culture was based around closing that circularity loop, the very first loop from manufacturer to consumer, and making sure that phones last as long as they can. And the way they did this was by designing from the ground up a modular phone that can have a camera replaced if the camera fails, or if a camera comes out that has better technical specifications, you can change that module out. If your screen cracks, you can change your screen. And at the end of life of the phone, if there are modules that can still be used, those modules can be reused to fix other phones. So you can see how they've extended the life, not only to the consumer, but also to the modules at the end of life. And this took complete commitment in company culture and vision and where they were going and what they wanted to impact. So this is a very good example of that long-term vision required to have the greatest impact in eco-design. Next slide, please. Samsung's Upcycling project. This one's very interesting because what Samsung did was they took phones that still functioned but came to end of life maybe because of firmware updates and maybe the operating system within the phone wasn't supported anymore, but you still had a good phone that had a camera, it has a microphone, it has a screen, and they identified a use for it in the IoT space. And Internet of Things is a huge industry these days, where even consumers at a hobby level are getting into Internet of Things. So they built a community around using their phones that were quote unquote at end of life, and made open source software, and they created ecosystems online where you can go and take a look at projects that you can do, and they partnered with educators in order to create projects at the education level. So very interesting. They basically created a whole new community in order to ensure that their phones have a second life and don't end up at the recycler or even worse in the landfill. Next slide, please. So how do we get started? Taking the three key themes that we've seen and identified and applying those. So the first one is get an overview of what the impacts are and what you want to impact. And you can do this by assessing the product's life cycle and understanding where the greatest impact is for that product. And then from there, you can look at standard strategies and what you would like to implement. And some of those can be driven by your market, and some of those can be driven by your business model. And one interesting example here is Philips and Philips Lighting. They created a business model around lighting as a service, where before the business model was your customer buys your light bulbs, they use your light bulbs, then hopefully they recycle them, and if not, they end up in the landfill. Well, Philips closed that loop by providing lighting as a service, where they come in and they provide the service, and they have direct access to those end-of-life light bulbs where they can refurbish them or recycle them appropriately. Collaborate internally and externally. We've seen how important this is, not only, as I mentioned, in the processes before manufacturing, but also after manufacturing. And within your company, you can collaborate with your suppliers. You can have interdisciplinary collaboration within your organization. You can collaborate with recyclers, users or recyclers, to have your products be used more efficiently, or have your products be recycled more efficiently. And finally, the one that we discussed earlier, multinational or small player, large player, it doesn't matter. We found that all 6 of these companies had similar themes. And as I mentioned, no, it doesn't matter if you are a triple-digit billion-dollar revenue company or a double-digit million-dollar revenue company. You can implement all of these themes that we've identified here. Next page, please. So what is the future of our project? We have 2 more sessions coming up. Here is the information for both of these. We hope that you can join in participate in these sessions. And next slide, please, Mark. We have a video summary that we're going to be putting together that highlights some key quotes, some key insights in a video setting. And we also have a presentation at a technical conference, which is Apex Expo. And you can find the information right there for that presentation.
And dropped in the chat window the links to sign up for session 5 and 6 for folks that are interested in one of those. Is this coming Thursday, so please sign up.
Wonderful. So with that, Mark, actually, one more slide. Let's do some thank yous to the participants that we got all of this wonderful information from. It was wonderful to work with them, and it was truly eye-opening, the amount of information that we got back and the amount of information that we had to go through and distill. To our team members, to management at iNEMI, and yourself as well, Mark, and the other organizations that helped us edit the videos and put these videos out.
Yes, thank you very much, Julio. We could not have done this project without your leadership and the team that we have here today that actually has joined us. I think just about everybody from the team is also on the line, and then we had some great presenters already. And as Julio talked about, we do have 2 more sessions coming up where we have additional presenters. So we'll hear some more good stories and good examples of what the innovators in the industry are doing. But with that, I wanted to see if there, first off, is there anybody from the team that has anything they would like to add at this point, and then I will open the floor for questions. So anybody on the team, feel free to unmute and chime in. Grace, if you have anything you'd like to add as well, please also chime in. All right, so let's ask for Grace. Yes.
Oh yes, sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. I was double muted. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Grace O'Malley, and I'm responsible for all the technical projects, the portfolio of projects that we have within iNEMI. And I would like to thank the team for their efforts in putting together this series, and also for obviously the summary here and the report out that they're going to share with the industry. I think it was a very interesting and somewhat innovative way to capture the very diverse views and of the industry, and from very diverse players in the industry, and yet focus in then on some of the common successful strategies that have been used. So thank you all for that. I know it took a lot of work to both identify, get the speakers, and to do all the background structuring of the questioning and analysis. So thank you all to the team for that. I think it's been very successful and hopefully will be informative to the industry at large.
Thank you, Grace. So with that, I will see it. Are there any questions from anybody in the audience or even from the team? If so, please use the raised hand function and I'll allow you to unmute and ask your question. So I'm not seeing any questions here, Julio. Is there anything you'd like to add? I think especially useful would be what's next. I mean, we talked about our video series that's coming out, but if I'm an organization, how do I start? Would you say? I mean, from everything that we've heard, what would be my starting point? And I know we touched on it.
Sure, as mentioned, understanding your product and understanding what its impact is, and is there something you would like to impact? Some companies want to focus on energy usage and energy reduction. Some companies want to focus on plastic reduction. So those are 2 very good examples, and you can see if you do a life cycle assessment, if the area you want to impact has a great impact, or if you have multiple areas you'd like to impact, which area has the greatest impact, and you can use that to gauge and understand which one you'd like to pursue.
Yeah, and I think that's a key point, is you need to kind of measure and understand where you are and pick 1 or 2 maybe
Yeah.
You don't try to eat, as a friend of mine used to say, you know, you've got a whole elephant to deal with. You can't usually deal with the elephant as a whole, but I can work on it one toenail at a time. So you kind of find what is the biggest toenail that I need to work on, and work on fixing that and trying to improve that. And then you sort of eventually you build this big culture, and you can address a lot of these issues. So I think that's a very important learning that we heard from all of them. And I think one of the things that runs through here is, I think you heard, is like, this was a company culture item. It wasn't one little group doing it. It was the whole company basically embraces this to be able to do this and to make it successful.
Absolutely. One very good example of this is Fairphone was looking at using plastic, or addressing plastic use in their battery cover. And what they found was that it had a very small impact on the footprint of their product. And what had a greater impact was actually the use of gold in connectors. So they decided to address that rather than address the plastic being used in the battery cover.
Okay. So we have actually a question from Gustav. Let me, if it's okay, Gustav, I'll unmute you and let you ask your question. So you're unmuted. There you go.
Thanks. So I wrote it in the chat too. So we've been, my name is Gustav and I work at Mycronic, which is an OEM in Sweden, doing machines for electronics production. And we've been working on LCAs, so life cycle analyses of our products. And I find that the interaction of the PLM software, so extracting all of the different objects and parts of our machines, to be less than smooth in interaction with the LCA software. Is this something, is it just us or me? Or are there recommendations in getting these to work more closely together?
So I can answer a little bit of that. It is not just you. From my experience, from other big companies that I've worked with and talked to, I'd say they're PLM systems that are capturing tons of data about their products and their bill of materials and where they're sourced. A lot of times those systems didn't have in them when they were built, what was it made of? Where did I source it from? Are there other alternatives? Is this the one I'm actually using today, or are there 16 different suppliers listed there and I'm using 3 of those and they vary by region or all this? So there were lots of sort of gaps within what the PLM systems were collecting, and then trying to integrate that into an LCA. Most of the ones that I've talked to, they have had pretty substantial work with like an intermediate group that's having to convert it into Excel or other spreadsheets or things to try to parse that into something that could then be used in the LCAs. Just that they have all the data. It's just generally they had all the data. It was just a lot of work to move it from one to the other. So you're not alone. I am not sure that there is a PLM LCA combo that exists today, but it sounds like a wonderful business opportunity if it does not. But I'll turn it over to others that maybe have seen this. And if there's other folks on the line that would like to chime in on that, let me know and I can unmute you as well. But are there any of our presenters that have some insight into this?
Yeah, so this is Carsten speaking, jumping in here then. This is really a key question you're asking here, Gustav, and I assume you have a broader range of machinery, and your machinery is, of course, pretty complex, and you sell them in, let's say, smaller numbers. So in that sense, you are somewhat different than the companies we have presented here, or where we had these stories. So, for example, Fairphone, they have only one product on the market at a time. So and then it's up to them to assess exactly this one product somehow. So also Google's product range is not that huge. So for them, it's really easier and let's say simpler to say, well, let's extract the data from somewhere, from PLM, from supplier data, supplier inquiries, generic data sets, databases, and put that into some kind of LCA software and make then very few LCAs of products of limited complexity. I think the case which comes close to you is then Schneider Electric. So because they have really a huge product spectrum, a huge variety here. But well, they are working on this now for many years. Actually, to compile these product passports. If somebody has a solution which could fit to you as well, then it would be Schneider Electric. I'm not fully sure how they transfer data from their PLM system then to some kind of LCA assessments. Would be worthwhile to listen to the recording of that session once again to get some information from them. But this is, well, a somewhat specific case you're describing here. And I understand the troubles you have.
Yeah, just a short comment. We don't have a huge number of products, but they're relatively large and complex. But I was surprised that there wasn't just a kind of a CIMA Pro button on ARAS, our PLM software, that you could just export an LCA, which seems kind of low-hanging fruit to me, even though it might be complicated fruit.
Yes, not to plug another iNEMI project, but I will. We do have a lifecycle estimator project that we just recently finished that is available to the iNEMI members, which I think, Gustav, you have access to. So it's an LCA Lite. Now, it doesn't integrate with your PLM or anything, but it does try to make it so that you can do an LCA estimate without having maybe, as you know, all the knowledge necessary to do a full GABI or a full CIMA Pro. We have come up with some assumptions in there that you can use to be able to get to an LCA. So if folks on the call are interested in learning more of that, please reach out to me via email, marks@inemi.org, and I can introduce that to you as an LCA tool. But it doesn't solve the problem, but it might make it more manageable, at least the LCA side. Are there other comments regarding Gustav's question or other questions that folks have? Let's see if there's anything else in the chat here. Okay. Not seeing anything, so I'll give it one more minute while folks cogitate, and then we'll let everybody get on with their day and have a few minutes back, perhaps. All right, so I don't see anything else. I will let everybody know that we will take this presentation and the recording, and it will be available on the iNEMI website probably here within the next week or so, hopefully shorter than that. We will send an email out to everybody that registered when that is available so that you can get it. And if you do have any further questions, do please email me, marks@inemi.org, and we will get back to you as quick as we can. And so I want to thank again the team and thank everybody for their attention today and in hearing what we've done. And I hope that you will join one of our future tech topic sessions and hear what some of these other companies are doing. So thanks much and have a great day.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.
Yeah. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.